All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Barron's Inc. QuickBooks Point of Sale training. Today we are going to talk about an item in your system, inventory. If you have a point of sale system, the main reason most people have point of sale systems is to be able to track what they actually have, be able to track their inventory. So today we're going to talk about setting up inventory, different ways that we can construct our inventory in the point of sale system, and then taking that particular item from being outside the store through the purchase order and invoicing, vouchering process into being an inventory item with numbers in your store. So we're going to go from the main screen here, and we're going to go to the item list. Now, the item list obviously is going to be a listing of all of your inventory. So in this case, we're going to go up here and click Add. Now, when you add, it means you're bringing in a new item into your system. You're adding a piece of inventory into your system. You will notice that on the Add Item screen, there are two red asterisks. One is next to item name, and one is next to department. That is because QuickBooks Point of Sale needs at least that information to create an inventory item. It needs at least an item name and a department. If you wanted to put no other data in there for your inventory item, it would still accept it as an inventory item. However, we need to have an item name and department. Now, departments are very, very important. Departments are essentially the structure of your inventory system in QuickBooks Point of Sale. Every item has to have a department. Now, you can have it default to system, which is what's going to happen if you didn't put any department when you create an item. However, best practices, having departments in your inventory is really going to help build a solid foundation to be able to track your data later, to be able to run reports on what's selling, run reports on what needs to be reordered, run reports on your most popular items or least popular items. Usually we suggest having anywhere from 8 to maybe 20 departments, depending on the size of your inventory and how intricate your inventory is. So for example, a clothing store might have men's apparel, women's apparel, kids apparel, men's footwear, women's footwear, kids footwear. That's pretty standard. Now, if you wanted to break it down even further, you could say men's tops, men's bottoms, men's accessories, men's footwear, men's hats, so on and so forth. What we want is to have a generic enough department structure where you can have multiple items in it, but specific enough where you can be able to run reports and get the data that you want for the items that you're looking for. So departments, I think it's something that as you create your inventory, as you start up and you're getting going with your QuickBooks Point of Sale, it's really something that you should take a step back and think about. It's much more difficult to go in later and reassign items into different departments than it is to have a solid department structure in place at the very beginning of when you get set up. So in this case, I'm just going to give it any department. Now, up here we have the inventory type. With the drop-down, you'll see it says inventory, non-inventory, service, assembly, and group. Inventory means it's a physical item in your store. It's something that you can have in your hand and give to the customer, and they can walk up the store with it. A pair of shoes, a wrench, a toy, etc. A non-inventory item is something that you still sell, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have something there. It's not going to track the amount that you have in stock. So, for example, if you had an inventory item and you oversold from what you had, you could show up as a negative as your quantity, whereas a non-inventory item, it doesn't track quantities. A non-inventory item might be an admittance ticket. If this was for a museum, point of sale for a museum, and hey, welcome to the museum, it's X amount of dollars, something like that, something that you still take money for and you can still track what you're selling, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving the customer a physical item. A service is much like a non-inventory item. It is basically a service. So if it's a bike shop and you're doing repairs, or you are a cobbler and you're you're fixing shoes, something like that, where you're providing a service. Usually it's depending on the state, but it should be a non-taxable service, and it's not something that we're tracking on inventory. Assemblies and groups are going a little bit deeper. Assemblies and groups allows you to create either taking multiple pieces of inventory and combining them together into one new piece of inventory. So say, for example, you've got a gift basket. You can add different items together to create a new gift basket, which is an entirely new item. Whereas in grouping, you can, let's say it's an outfit. So you have a special on shirts, shorts, socks, and shoes. You can still sell them individually, but it does become a different price as you sell them together in a package. So those are the kind of different levels of inventory for this case. And the majority of the items in most retail stores, we're just going to say inventory. And we're going to give this a name. We're going to do Barron's t-shirt. Okay, item description. That's where you can put any additional information that you want to put. It doesn't necessarily mean an item name, but something else. So if this is a Barron's t-shirt, I can say Barron's Slim Fit logo tee. So it's just a way to add a little bit more information for that particular item. We don't necessarily want to make the item name a long, drawn out, explanatory name. We just want to be able to have something searchable. Now, once again, when you have inventory, when you're looking for inventory, they will all be searchable fields in here. So you can always look at an item, not only by the name, but by the department, by the item description, etc. Here, we're going to give it a size and an attribute. Attribute means a descriptive classification for the item. In this case, we're going to say attribute is going to be the color. So I'm going to say small and white. Now, QuickBooks Pro and QuickBooks Multi-Store have something called a style grid. This doesn't show up on QuickBooks Basic, but what it does is it allows you to create multiple items in multiple sizes at the same time. So I'm going to take you real quick into the style grid. It'll end up booting us back out, but we'll jump back in. So we're going to go style. We're going to save changes. It's going to take a second because it's creating this. Okay, so now we have a style grid. So once again, this is for items that have the same item name, same department, maybe same description. So in this case, we've got a size run of clothes. So we're going to say small, medium, L, and XL. And then we're going to have it multiple colors. We're going to say white, black, red, and blue. Okay. Now in here, we're just going to add some inventory numbers. We're going to tell the system, hey, these items are here. Now, even if you don't necessarily have that particular item in stock or didn't order it, I always suggest put the 0 in. Say, for example, this red shirt, we didn't order any red, but we know it comes in red and we'll order it more later. You have to put some kind of numerical value in that box, even if it's a 0, for the system to create that SKU. Now, you can always go back later and create the SKU. I just personally, because I like organization, I want all my SKUs for the same item to be in numerical order. So we're going to put something in each of these boxes here. And we're going to save it. There we go. And now you see, I just created multiple tees. Different attributes, different sizes. Now we're going to pull up just any of them. I'm going to go back to edit. So we're going to take a deeper look at the other fields as well. So in here we have regular price average unit cost. So you can give it a price. And we're going to say the price is 20, the average unit cost is 10. Now you'll notice it says average unit cost here and order cost here. Order cost is the suggested cost that you're going to order this item from. So let's say $10. So the majority of the time that you're purchasing from your particular vendor, the item is going to cost you $10. The average unit cost is actually a liquid number. So it can change based on the orders that you do in the system. So let's say, for example, it regularly costs $10, but the particular vendor is having a sale, a closeout sale, and your cost is only $5. It will average out the cost that you've spent through the sales history, through the purchasing history in the system. So your average unit cost can be the exact same as your order cost, or it might not, depending on what you're paying for from time to time, if you have discounts, or if you are following the purchase order receiving voucher process in the system, which we'll go into a little bit later. On-hand quantity. Best practice would be to receive items from your vendors to change the quantity. In this case, I'm just going to give us a quantity. I don't really recommend going in and changing quantity here because it really doesn't give you a paper trail for as far as what's coming in, what's going out. In this case, just because we're doing a training, I am going to give an on-hand quantity. You see it says available. In the multi-store format, you can see, in this case, we have 2 stores. You can see what you have in each store. All right, tax. You can say if something is taxable or non-taxable. UPC. So a lot of clients ask, hey, can I use the vendor barcode? So everything I have is already barcoded from the vendor. How can I track that? This is the field where you could put the UPC in. Now, a common misconception is the UPC has all that data built into that number. All UPC is either a 12 or a 16-digit number, but it still has to tie back to something. So in this case, we can put in whatever number that is, and we're essentially assigning in the QuickBooks system, hey, if you scan that particular UPC, it's this item. Quick Pick group is something that we can look at in a little bit later on in the week when we talk about more advanced inventory, but you can actually create easy quick pick groups for particular items. Talk about that. Let's get out of there. Vendor. So you can put whatever vendor you want that you're purchasing from. You can also have alternative vendor. So you can have up to 5 different vendors under one item. So let's say you've got an item that you have a couple different distribution companies that sell it, or you can buy an item direct from the vendor or from a secondary source. Here's where you can put the different vendors in there. And then when you actually create a purchase order and put the item on the purchase order, you can tell it what vendor it's coming from. All right, reorder point. Now this is a great feature of QuickBooks Point of Sale. So you can set up a reorder point in your system. So the reorder point is essentially an alarm that tells you, hey, anytime this item gets below a certain level, it's going to prompt you to reorder it. So usually I suggest, hey, if you know this particular item takes 3 weeks to get here, set the reorder point to a point where you know you have about 3 weeks worth of inventory in stock. And that way you can always keep the better selling items in stock. There are reports of best selling items in the system. I don't always recommend putting a reorder point on every single item in the store, although you can. Usually I'd say take your top 20 or top 50 best selling items and set reorder points for those, because those are the items that you really want to be able to keep track of, as opposed to having too many alerts for every single item. Item number. So this is a system generated number. This is essentially what we call a SKU number. So you can give it your own individual SKU, but the items from QuickBooks will be assigned an item number or a SKU as you create them, and they go in numerical order. ALU, that is alternative lookup. So an ALU is really just any additional field, any additional way that you want to track that particular item. It could be a secondary UPC. It could be another item number for a different classification that you're tracking. It's just any other way to track this particular item that allows a searchable field for this particular item that you want to use. Once again, none of these are required, but it is helpful if there's another way that you want to track the item. Units of measure, it allows you to create, if you're using units of measure in your system, where you can purchase via one unit of measure and sell it by another. So you purchase things by the square foot, but sell it by the square inch, so on and so forth. You purchase things by the case, but sell it by the individual. This is where you can set up that base unit of measure, and manufacturer if you are tracking the manufacturer as well. Here are some of the less common fields down here. So we've got serial numbers where you can assign the serial number if you're using serial numbers. Commission, excuse me, if you're setting up a commission structure for your employees, make sure they earn commission on it, built-in rewards program, etc. If you are using shipping, you can put your shipping weight, height, length, and width. That way, if you put it in the shipping manager or you're shipping it out, it automatically pre-populates the size of the item. And these other fields here, comments is just essentially a yellow sticky note. It's not going to be customer facing. It's only for the employee. Anything else you want to track or anything else you want to say about that particular item. History, so any transactional document that the inventory item is on. So that's any purchase, any sale, any return, any order from a vendor, any receiving voucher, any return voucher, anything in your system that is going to either add or remove inventory items from your system will be tracked here in the history box. And then at the bottom here, we have statistics where as you go along, you can track the history of what your better selling items are, what your net sales are, et cetera, down here in the stats. In this case, we're just going to save this item. And then we're going to get out of here. Now, I discussed when we're creating an item as far as adding the inventory numbers, adding the quantities. I'm going to take you through the proper best practice way of getting items in your system. So down here, we've got purchase orders. So we're going to go ahead and click on a purchase order. Now, a purchase order is what we call a planning document. A planning document means you are telling the system, this is what I expect to come in. This is what I want. This is what I think is going to happen. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it is. It just means, hey, this is what I expect to come in. So we're going to create a purchase order from, just going to give it any vendor. Now, if you remember when we talked about the preference setup, we defaulted our purchase order number sequencing to be store and then PO number. So we're on store 1, and this is our first PO. So it's 1-1. We're going to put our ship to address and bill to address up here. We can give it an order date, a ship date, and a cancel date. So if you want to track, hey, if it doesn't come after X amount of date, you can cancel the purchase order. You can set that up in here. Associate, if you want to track who is actually making the purchase orders, if you have multiple people using the purchase order functionality. In here, we're going to enter our items. So in this case, let's take a look at the item that we just created. It was the Barron's t-shirt. So I typed in Barron's. It's going to pull up everything under Barron's T. Now, we talked about having different searchable fields. So I could type in Slim. I could type in 7341. And basically what it'll do is it'll pull up that particular item. So we'll go back to Barron's. We'll pull up that T. Let's do black. So it's going to pull up anything with black in the name. So any of those fields that we saw in the inventory creation, so the UPC, the barcode, the SKU number, the item number, the item description, etc., those are all the searchable fields in here. Or you can do the drop down and just start picking. And let's do another Barron's tier too. And you'll see it'll say what we have on hand, what's due, meaning what we're going to put on this this purchase order. And I'm going to add some numbers in here. I'm going to add 6 of those, 2 of those, 1 of those. Okay, so now I've created a purchase order. I've got my vendor, I've got the ship to and bill to address, I've got my associate, my order date. Down here, if you have terms built into your vendors, so when you create your vendors, you can say, okay, this vendor is net 30 with a 5% discount, et cetera, et cetera. Those terms will be built in, or you can edit it for each individual purchase order. So we're gonna say it's gonna be net 30, 5%, and so now it's built in. It tells me my payment due date and my ship date, and a place you can put instructions. Please only ship complete, or please ship via FedEx. Any other information that you want to have printed out on the purchase order that you would send to your vendor. Now you can, if you know your discount, you can add it in here. If you know your fees, et cetera, et cetera. Let's say there's a $10 tariff from this particular vendor, and we've got it all right here. So you can either save and print it, which would, you print out to a standard office printer, and that way you could mail it or hand it to a vendor. You can save only, or we have the option later to email it. So I'm going to go back to the main screen. So I've created that purchase order. I've sent it off to my vendor. I'm hoping this stuff comes in. Now, 2 weeks later, we received the shipment from the vendor. So now we've got the box. We've got the purchase order that we made. Now, how do we bring it into the system? How do we add this to the system? Because at this point, it's still just a purchase order. It's still just a planning document. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the PO list here. You'll notice it's got the red one. That means we have an open purchase order. And review it. A couple things we can do. We're going to pull up this purchase order. We can say, I want to receive items, or I get out of here. I can go direct into receiving vouchers. And over here, I have received from PO. So basically you can get to the receiving either way. You can either go through that particular purchase order and then receive it, or go into the receiving voucher and then reference back to the PO. So it works vice versa. In this case, I'm gonna get in the receiving voucher, receive from PO. It's gonna pull up all of my open purchase orders. In this case, I've just got this one. And I can either receive all due, which means everything that was on that purchase order is here, or I can select items to receive. So in this case, I'm going to select items to receive. And I'm going to say, let's see, all of these are here. I received one of those. And I received, so I ordered 6. I'm going to say I only got 3. The other 3 are on back order. All the rest I received. Back in them all. There's one. Okay. Now I'm going to continue. Apply free from the purchase order. So we put that $10 tariff in on the purchase order, which is now going to show up on a receiving voucher. Boom. Now that turned that PO into a receiving voucher. You see we've got the vendor up here. We've got the purchase order number that it's referencing. We've got our invoice information. We've got our instructions to the vendor. We've got our fee down here as well. So now we've got our purchase order, and we are going to, you can do save and print or save. Now the receiving voucher is telling our system, hey, these items are here and now they're physically in our inventory. So we took that purchase order, we turn it into a receiving voucher, and now we are going to save it. And now those items are in our system. So now we can go back and take a look at our item list. And what was that? 7352 was a SKU number for the red Baron shirt. So we just received that. We want to pull up that shirt. Oh, let's do this. Okay, so now we've got that particular item. And if you scroll down, now in your history, it shows that we received 3 items on 9/1/2020, that's today. We now have 3 on hand. We have the document number, which is essentially the purchase order number that we referenced, and the vendor. So now you can even double click on that, and it references the PO where you received it. So now it's a historical document in your system. Now you have told the system that item is physically here. And that's why we don't want to manually change our inventory numbers in the item list, because now if you do the proper steps as far as creating the purchase order, creating the receiving voucher, receiving the items, now you have that paper trail. Now you have that historical document where you can track when it came in, how it came in, what you paid, etc. Now, once it's a historical document, once you have a receiving voucher, let's go back in here. I'm going to go to our receiving history. Now we've got our receiving voucher here. You cannot delete, edit, or in any way change your receiving voucher, because that has become a historical document in your system and it is set in stone. So no one can go in and delete it and say, oh, we never received that. Now it's in your system. You can return or reverse that particular voucher down here, you'll see. But what that'll do is it'll show the original voucher and it'll show the reversal. So now you have that full paper trail as far as being able to track your inventory. Now you could do a return to vendor if, say, for example, it came too late. You could always send things back, but we're not going to get into that just yet. Now let's go back here, because when I received that purchase order, I left off a couple shirts and I left off just a couple items. So you'll see we still have an open purchase order down here. I'm going to go ahead and view that. And now we've still got that open purchase order. We ordered 12, we received 9, but we still have quantity due. So the PO is now open and we still got the items in. So if you're creating a receiving voucher and referencing that PO, you can track what's still outstanding. You have that purchase order and say, hey, I ordered 10 of this particular item, but I only received 7. So now you've got a paper trail as well, as far as tracking what the vendors are sending you, what the vendors still owe you, etc. Get out of here. Okay. Now that we've created the item, we received the item, we created a purchase order, we got into our system. One thing actually, best practice is to create a purchase order, then turn it into a receiving voucher. However, you don't necessarily have to do a purchase order. To add the item in the system via receiving voucher, you can create a receiving voucher on the fly. You don't have to reference a PO. Let's say, for example, you were at a trade show and you wrote a quick order at the trade show to a vendor and they shipped it out right away. So you don't necessarily have the time to go back in the store, create that purchase order, enter it in the system. Maybe it just shipped and it's there the next day. You can still go into receiving vouchers and add items directly onto the receiving voucher. Whether it's items that you already have in the system, no cost. So it's an item already in the system, or say it's a brand new item. You can still actually create, over here we say add new item. You can create a brand new item directly onto that receiving voucher as well. So best practice, take the PO, turn it into a receiving voucher, receive the item, but we can still do a receiving voucher without the purchase order. Okay, Next, we're going to discuss customers. Oh, sorry. Yes, of course.
The two of us. So there's a lot of manual entry going on here. You can, like, you had an Excel sheet or something to input it. You have to manually enter all these items.
Correct.
Build out the list clearly. So you got to build it.
Now, when you say manual entry, do you mean onto the purchase order or the inventory, in the inventory items themselves?
The inventory item, like going back to the screen where you were on, putting a lot of detail into that list, because you start, you have to assign the departments, and then so once you build out, I guess, the scale, because you're saying the backbone is the departments, right?
Correct.
So once you build that out, and so, I don't know, I guess when you're starting from the beginning, it seems like there's a lot of building out. As you're going and you're adding, it's not as labor intensive. It just seems to be.
So usually from the beginning, if you've already got an Excel file or a CSV file with the inventory data, be it from a vendor, be it from a previous system, easiest thing to do is you can go to File, go to Utilities, and go to Import.
Okay. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is a lot of, even if it's a new store and you did like a massive order, you're hoping your vendors would give you some digital documentation that you can bring it in.
Correct. So if I go into Data Import, go to Inventory Items, if you've got a vendor catalog, you've got the default template. So if I press default template, it pulls up, the system's got a built-in Excel file where you can just drop the fields in. So you can say,
Okay.
Cost goes here, retail price goes here, et cetera, or custom file. So personally, I spent 12 years in retail. I spent 8.5 years in retail using QuickBooks. I actually had a retail store. We had 30,000 SKUs and our system crashed and I had to start from scratch with nothing in QuickBooks Point of Sale. So as far as data entry, yes, it can be very labor intensive. But if you have that file, this is a really quick, easy way to get started. Once it's in your system, you can do reorders. You can scan those items. They're really quick to get there. It's that initial buildup.
Okay.
And I think kind of what we're trying to do here is to, although, usually people don't have patience, they don't want to start slowly. Having that foundation, having that structure in place where you have the right departments, you have, even because I'm so OCD about it, I want, let's say the attribute, I want it to be all the same. So I don't want it to be, some people have black, some people have BLK, some people have capital B, some people have lowercase b, etc. I always like having that in place to start. And then once you have that structure, it's really easy to continue adding onto it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions?
No, I'm just watching this and thinking, I like that you mentioned that it can integrate with QBO, because I'm not so sure I'm going to go into desktop. I had that dilemma, and I'm thinking, stay in your lane.
and for years, people have been asking, why can't QuickBooks Point of Sale connect with QBO? They're both QuickBooks products. And I understand the frustration with that. One's a browser-based software and one's a server-based software, and it's just never the twain shall meet. But because of the app now that allows it, I think it's going to be a lot easier for QBO users to use the POS and to have that communication.
Okay. And what was that application again?
It's from a company called Ability Business Systems, and it's an application that allows, so at the end of the day, if we click end of day, you'll see here, it'll say exchange data with QuickBooks. That would be if we have a desktop QuickBooks file, so Enterprise, Pro, Premier, etc. The application would allow, it's a third-party basic browser window that once you close out your point of sale, it would convert the desktop point of sale data backup into one that can be seen by QuickBooks Online, and then push it over into your QBO. So it's a little bit complicated. If you want some more information, I can give you some more information offline as far as pricing and et cetera.
Yeah.
But it is a lot easier, especially when you have third-party bookkeepers that are, trying to help the stores out, and you don't necessarily have the ability to log in from home to a desktop computer there in the store.
Correct. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Next, we're going to go over customers. So we have the item list. Now we're going to have the customer list, and you'll notice they look almost identical. It's got the same kind of fields, and we're going to add a new customer. So you'll see very similar to how the inventory is structured. Once again, we can import a customer list. So if we have a customer list from a previous software, we can import that as well. The only thing that cannot import, though, with customers is their history. So customer history, be it QuickBooks or any other software, it just doesn't translate correctly.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got all the information here. So once again, kind of like the inventory, we've got the red asterisk. The only thing that's required is a last name. So you have the last name, but you can put as much information as you want. So I'm going to say Bill. Down here, you track as company. So this is for, so for example, we have a compost client. So they have composting fields, and they have big business. So commercial composting,
Mm-hmm.
and they might have the client might have 10 to 15 different drivers that'll come in, and to track it, you can say track this company, and then that way, that customer that comes in, or that POS user that comes in, they can say, oh, I'm with Marin Compost, and then all that data is stored under the company file. So that way you can run reports on what, how much is that company spending in your store? How much, do we need to charge them, et cetera, et cetera. So you have the ability to either have individual POS clients or POS customers, or track them as a kind of a corporate customer.
So once you set them up, track as a company, then for each employee or whoever, they would each have their own, so you could know if
they would each have their own, but then you also would have the company as well. So you would see the overall.
Oh, so that's okay. So Bill Johnson is an
employee of X company.
Of this company, and then Jane Doe is also an employee. So you'd have them both listed.
Correct.
And they would pop up on as an option on the POS.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. We've got the standard information here: phone, mobile, email. I always suggest getting a phone number. And email as well. Now, the benefit of getting the email and the phone number, despite the fact that it takes a little bit longer when you're bringing someone up, is you can go back later, and especially with email, there is the functionality, which I'll show you guys in just a little bit, where you can connect point of sale to constant contact. You can automatically push your point of sale data over into constant contact. The more information that you have in here, the more you can reference it later. So you can run reports on zip code. So I'm getting most of my business out of this particular zip code, or getting the addresses. You can send out a traditional physical mailer, things like that. So I always suggest the more information you can get about the customer, the better, but last name at the very least. Customer ID, system generated, alternate phone, alternate contact if you needed that. Customer type, we have the ability to create customer types. It's not set up yet in here, but say for example, you have wholesale customer and you want to track wholesale, or you have retail customer, something like that. Any other kind of customer segmentation that you want to track in the system, you can create a customer type. Tax exempt, if they're tax exempt, you can accept checks, even though no one writes checks anymore. A charge account, so if you want to allow them to have a store charge account, where they can, when you're ringing them up, it just says, okay, put it on my account. You can click that there and give them a limit. So you can say they can charge up to $500, or you can charge $100 million, whatever's going to make the most sense for you. Now you notice over here, it says custom fields. So With vendors, with customers, and with items, each of those has the ability to have 7 custom fields. So any other data that you want to track for your customers, you can create a custom field, which becomes a searchable field and becomes something that you can run reports on. So in this case, I chose account number. Let me just give them account number. So in the past, for example, I ran a sporting goods type store, and we would have different sports clubs that would come in. So I would always track what club they were with, and then we could run reports on what were, who was coming in the most, et cetera, et cetera. So any other way that you want to be able to track the customer, once again, you can create a custom field, or put birthday on there, and then run a report on whose birthday it is and send them a free coupon, something along those lines. Now I'm just going to save that. And now I've got a new customer. So now that we have some customers, we'll go up here to the customer dropdown. And we're going to go to the customer center. So the customer center is basically a way that you can track essentially your customers. So it'll tell you how many new customers you've had in the last 7 days, how many average receipts, how many returning customers, and really kind of run down, are you seeing the same people over and over? Is your business growing? Are you reaching new people, et cetera? And in here, you can create an email campaign list, print mailing labels. You can export your customer list to a file if you've got another third-party email, like a SurveyMonkey or MailChimp or one of those. Or you want to write physical letters, or it'll go to Microsoft Word. So when I talk about collecting as much information as possible, here's where it really has the tangible benefits in point of sale, where you can create your customers, or you can really get a snapshot of who they are, how they're coming in, and how you can reach them outside of your store. We've also got the reward manager. So we've got a reward system set up in the system. It is a purchase threshold reward program. So what that means is you're telling the system, turn that on. For every X amount the customer spends, they're getting a certain reward. So in here we have, for every $500 they spend, they get a $10 coupon. You can give it an expiration or none. You can set your tracking period, and you can automatically enroll new customers in the rewards program. And you can also block it for X amount of days. So you can say, okay, you earned the reward, you can't spend it today. You have to wait at least a day. You have to wait till tomorrow. And then credit email campaign, which we already kind of saw. It does have the ability, it has an integration with Constant Contact, but you can still filter out the customers that you want and then send it to a third-party email campaign. So for example, you can set up, okay, everyone that's been in for the last 30 days or last 60 days or last 90 days, or any customers that have not been in, you want to kind of spark a renewal of interest in your store from customers that haven't been in a while, or merchandise interest. So everyone that's bought from this particular vendor, I'm going to let them know that that's going to go on sale next week, or anyone that's bought from this particular department, so on and so forth. Or you can create a custom, everyone from this zip code, everyone from this birth date range, something like that. Let's say system, everyone's bought from that vendor. And what it'll do is it'll pull out the list of all the customers, and you can either select them all and then export it, or send it directly to Constant Contact through your point of sale. Any questions so far?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, well then I'm going to wrap it up for today. We've got the creating new items. We've got taking that item from a purchase order to a receiving voucher to in your system. We've got creating new customers. We've got importing, and we've got our customer center. Tomorrow we'll go through actually making transactional sales and different types of customer orders.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, Chris. Thank you.
Of course. And any other questions, let me know offline, and I can send you over, if you like, the information on the QBO POS connected app.
Okay, sounds great.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.